hogia hiral yda ni wedi'n geni mewn blawd chi.
But you got to be born in Bangor, Hero, to be a football. And I wasn't born here. Well, I class myself, yes.
Well, I was born in St David's Hospital, so Glanadda, so I'm not a proper Sybil. You've got to be born in Hirral to be a proper Sybil. My sister is. She was born in the house that she still lives in now, in Mason Street.
Os rwy'n dweud Sybil y ti, ia, o'ch chi chi'n cymryd eich pechu wrth rwy'n galw chi'n Sybil, de. Fytha ffydd genwyr ardal o, de.
And he reckons it's from the slate industry. That they said that Sybil is a spring onion, yeah, in English, and good slates would split like a spring onion. So it's about saying the Sybils are like good slates.
All I was told
Mae Sybil, mae llechan dan hollti fel Sybil. And I quite like it to relate to the slate industry because that's what Hirral was based on.
Yeah.
Hirral is like my home.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I pobl Hirral yn licio'r High Street. Fama di Bangor. Fama di'r Bangor iawn, lwch, Hirral.
A mi o'n y gymeriadau. Pobl iawn, o'ch chi.
But I had an absolutely marvellous childhood in this area with the people.
Da chi'n hoffi byw yn Hirral?
Yeah, I love Hirral so much. And I also like Ysgol Hirral. I don't want to leave it. Do you want to leave at all? No, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving.
We all grew up in the same street together.
Same street?
Yeah.
Which street would that be?
Well, it's Llys Emrys now, but it was Foundry Street.
That's an issue in itself for me because it's Foundry Street, it always was.
It's always Foundry
And it will
Street,
because when they changed the name, they lost the heritage then, to me. Because it was a foundry at the end of the street.
And then so there was me, then they were next door but one, and then Pete was next door.
He's still called Pete next door to this day.
Smydo mam yn had brynon nhw 10 Fairview tra 1958. A adag hynny, ddaru mam yn had talu 700 o bunna am 10 Fairview. Wedyn dyna lle fiwys i wedyn, adra wrth gwrs efo mam yn had, tan oeddwn ni'n prodi yn 1973. Wedyn oedd Lorena fi'n di prynu 14 Robert Street blwyddyn cyn prodi, oedd yna lot o waith na ddethon ni fe fyny. Ddethon ni 16 Fairview. Ond o mam yn had dal i fod yn 10 Fairview. Eisio fanna wedyn a bryno ni 55 Home Road.
Mr Templeton lived in the house before us. And I mean, there's people from Hirral in Caergardner now, you know, sort of, I got to introduce myself because a lot of them are their old ladies and they don't really remember me as a grown-up. And they say where I used to live, and I said I was 30 years in Elm Road, and where the house was. Oh, I'm not sure I know that one. I said where Mr Templeton used to live. Oh, yes, yes. I always remember it. Mr Templeton, still Mr Templeton's house. Oh, he kept the chip shop opposite Mitre Drave.
I was born in Fountain Street, then moved to Sierra Road, and moved to Warm Road, where my mum still lives after 51 years. I now live up in Llyn. I had a very good childhood memory here. And when you used to go out during the day, we'd have a social life outside, no computers back then. Climbing trees, falling out of trees, hurting yourselves, eating mud. Used to play in the churchyard here, climbing the trees in the churchyard, good old days.
Oedd yn byw yn Fountain Street, 1964, 60 years, ia. A mi oedd y wraig yn disgwyl beth am i ti fyny i llithro fewn i St David's Hospital. Oedd mod i'n byw rhwng Congo, oedd ni'n nabod Mr and Mrs Pumphrey yn rhedeg fama. Oedd oes i ma. A oedd nhw'n ffonio bob hyn a hyn i'r hospital. A oedd ni yma o 7 o'clock tan oedd hi'n hanner nos, tan oedd y babi wedi cael ei geni. Wedyn fama oeddwn ni yn y Mostyn, efo Mrs Pumphrey.
Hirral's the oldest place around Bangor because William Street has been there for like about 2,000 years ago.
And
or
Fountain
something.
Street.
Also Fountain Street, and I think Robert Street because that looks quite old.
Dwi'n cofio nain Tony cadw siop gwerthu dadab dda felly yn y gwylod lle oedd yr siop chips gyda fo.
When I was in St John's Ambulance Brigade, yeah, there were swings across the road, and Gladys was there, and you would buy a little cone of chips.
Yeah.
6 something like that. Yeah. And that was 60s.
She used to have a little, first of all, Tony's grandmother had a little coffee shop there.
Right.
And then it turned into a little sweet shop. Just in where the chip shop was on the corner, just a small one. And then she used to sell ice cream through the window.
And over the 50 years in the chippy, you know, huge amounts of people employed part-time and lots of fun. Open virtually, we closed for 3 days at Christmas, and that's it. And we just absolutely loved it.
You know Hacker's Garage?
Do?
There used to be, I don't know, I never actually knew what it was called, but we used to call it a shop with the flag. And
Shop.
it sold like everything.
Shop.
Like all the sweets you could ever think of, all the chocolate bars you could ever think of, every single loaf of bread that had ever been invented, all the juices in the world and everything. It just, like, I used to walk in there and they used to sell like little bags with 10 sweets in for 10p.
Ambrose Street used to be all shops. When I was about 7 or 8, I used to go for cigarettes with my mother to Mrs Gruffy's because they started the slum clearance then, and that was standing there on its own, you know.
A wedyn mi oedd Mrs Jones Shop Chips wedyn ar y tŷ gornol. Champion o dyna lle oedd y plant a chi yn hel ag ddoedd chi. Mrs Jones wedyn a chi'n mynd yn uwch i fyny wedyn. Gwylod William Street, mi oedd na siop Wolford Butcher oedd o. Wedyn pen arall i Fairview ar gornol Home Road, oedd na siop fanna Mr and Mrs Jones Rolly oedd ni'n galw fo. Top Home Road oedd post office Mr and Mrs Williams a gwerthus dadab felly plant.
He danced Chris next to Tommy Jones's bakery. He was a shoemaker. He lived in Water Street.
Well, people heard of self-sufficient. People didn't have to go to town to shop because everything was here.
There's the vending machines in the swimming pool. Do they count as shops?
It was Tommy Bakehouse. He had a lovely bakery and he owned a cafe adjacent. So he had fresh bread, cakes. Here was just the flats across me near the mustard. The material was just arriving then, ready to construct the flats here.
Ond fel oedden ni'n blant, oedd pobl yn cael ei symud i Mesgylchan ac hefyd. Achos bod y tai, slym oedden nhw'n galw o. So oedd y pobl, fatha bob man arall, good and bad, de. Ac oedden ni'n chwarae yn y tai yma fel o'n gwagio nhw, derlich, da felly. Ac yn diwedd ar yn chwalu nhw a bildio'r fflatiau na fydda felly sy'n awan.
Oedden nhw lloerig pobl fama, dydy am y slym. Oedden gymuned glos, agos, pawb yn helpu gilydd.
Ond, na characters yna. Oedd na characters yma'n gor, yn y Hiralcwdd. Pobl iawn a chi. Oedd chi'n nabo pob de.
Huge amount of characters. Just everywhere. And all talking Welsh, but I always spoke English back. I don't know why.
There was a lot of nicknames. There was Mrs Jones PP Carthy.
Jeff Bubbles Bum Bum.
Oh,
Jeffrey Bubbles Bum Bum.
Yeah, he was one of the gang.
One of the gang.
I don't know what breed he was.
He was
everything.
Of Pangs 57,
He was, I remember Betty saying he had 84 breeds in him.
Somebody asked for a pound of sausage and he was measuring them out, and he cut a sausage in half because it came to over a pound, you see, you know. He cut one, so that's what everybody called him from then on, half a sausage.
Charlie Davis from the top of Home Road. There's the house on the corner there, corner of Fairview and Mom Road, Charlie Davis. He bought a bed that lifted up. He'd only just bought it and Charlie didn't know how it operated. Then we operating, he lifted up and trapped Charlie between the bed and the wall. And nobody could get in the house. They had to call the fire brigade to break into the house and get Charlie the bed down.
David Scotch, he'd been in the Navy merchant. I had a hell of a hook nose of him, far bigger than mine, and I say something. With a ragged old cap tilted to the side and a fag, whole rolly, always dripping from one side of his mouth. Never changed the sides.
Dad o'n John Pritchard, oedd I daid o'n John Pritchard hefyd, lle. A wedyn, da ni'n siŵr cynta bod o wedi cael yr enw Swallow I hun, yn ta na I dad o, oedd yn Jack Swallow, a bod o wedi cario lawr iddo fo. Oedd o'n gyrru ferrybot drosodd o pier i'r Gysel, ac o'r Gysel I Bwmaris. Club Street oedd o'n byw ar ôl o gael I ennill, lle. A wedyn, fel symud wedyn ar ôl fel briodi, oedd o'n Black Heckman Street wedyn, yn hirol o fyma. A wedyn oedd o'n yfad, dyna fi oedd I broblam o, lle. Credir, yn llongwr de.
Well, they were. David Cale, the sailmaker. He was absolutely character. Driving around in a little red Mini, looking outside of his of the hatch he had at the top of the sailmakers.
Does anyone know David Cale? Did anyone know him?
Yes, We remember David Cale where he lived across the road to Gladys, and when he had the big
I only remember him from being stuck when I was in the postman behind him with his dog at the back.
Oh yeah.
He introduced 20 mile an hour long before
And he always used to say he'd been here and there. And Jack Ashton used to say, he's not been anywhere, he's only looked through the window.
And you could go up there and see the lofts and the sails all cut out, ready, and the smell of hemp as you walked up the steep stairs there.
Griff Pritchard, oedd o'n anabal o'n weithio o rhyd I oes, a o'n gloff am nadwy a pethau. Ond y pob yn edrych ar ôl Griff, hyd yn oed tan farfodd oedd rwy'n yn ôl a fynd efo I Clwb Croswell. A fy'n mor o bod o'n mynd adran iawn efo.
Just after the war, my job was to scrape spare meat off bones and chop it up and do it into £1 bags of scraps. And people used to come in and say, can I have a 6-penny bag of scraps? So the shop got its name as Johnny Sixpence. Wow. When I go out somewhere now, people spot me, oh, Johnny Sixpence.
As children, we were let out. Those in Gymraeg, those allan one, shoo. A bit of pocket money, you know, 6pence. And Bangor was our oyster, really.
Yeah, I loved it because, you know, well, when we weren't in school, we could go out all day and there was always somebody to call for, you know, like if your best friend in Fountain Street wasn't allowed out for some reason, there was always somebody else to go to.
Yeah, I was knocking on my friend's door and he was like, oh, sorry, I'm not playing out right now, I'm playing Fortnite. And I was like, okay.
Well, Bangor's very popular with all people, really, because all the clubs in Bangor, you know, the social clubs, and that closed, haven't they? So this is an opportunity for them all to come here, and it's something that everybody enjoys doing. Yes, it's somewhere where they can meet, because Bangor's gone now, the High Street thing. I've been running it for 13 years. I started off in 2009-10. We've got the oldest pensioner here is 100 on the 2nd of December, and she's having a party here. And then the youngest is 50, you know.
The play centre isn't there, it's changed to student houses now.
Yeah, me too, I used to go there once.
So I had like a party, there was a massive dragon slide. I remember. And I used to like sit at the bottom and like, I'd like frighten the life out of everybody who was coming down. And I used to climb up it again. And then there was like loads of different levels and there was a massive shop.
And you used to get cheesy chips and they were so good.
The only fun thing in Bangor has just been knocked down.
Playing football on the beach there. Going swimming all around on the quays. Sneaking over to Pendrin over the wall and getting gamekeepers chasing you with a gun. Mind you, they did. We thought that they were loaded, you know. Oof, I didn't know what I could do an Olympic high jump record over that wall.
And we used to go to the park a lot. I'd be scared stiff now. I'd never go to the park. But we had like a rope swing there and on Beach Road. Or we kind of dug caves in the beach and it went underneath the playing ground, playing field. So I'm surprised it didn't collapse. Dug a cave there and I made little bookshelves and.
We used to go dig for bullets and stuff down the front by the beach, yeah. In the all the sort of slate and stuff on the beach. Stick them up and find bullets, 303 bullets.
Ie, oedden ni'n chwarae ffwtbol o boed yn stryd. Sram cein am byd yn gwyn. Hi ni'r tad dod i kick-about bach efo chi. Gorfod o'n gofalus wrth gwrs efo malu ffenestri o beth oedd chi,
We just wish that we lived where there's loads of stuff like it used to be, but now everything's just closing down.
Hero's a nice place, yeah, but it could do with more stuff for kids.
Yeah,
like
an arcade at least.
It's good, because people are always complaining nowadays, like, oh, Hero's a student town and all that. But it's like, it's not, because like, kids live here, I live here. We live here.
Yeah. I don't know if it was like in Dean Street or lots of them were in the houses.
In Fairview,
Lots of them were in the houses. People just opened different rooms and made a pub. I know Dean Street, there was about 6 or 7 pubs there.
Over 120 years ago, there was 114 pubs. 2 of them remain, the Nelson and the Mustang. A lovely little pub. Keith, excellent, very caring, very nice. Keith and Linda, should I say. Also, they're very caring indeed.
Part of my family owned the Nelson in 1972. I watched the Leeds Chelsea epic final upstairs.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. First colour television in Iran.
And Evel was like Carling Black Label, so there was a huge amount of drinking people in, but that was the thing we did in Bangor, drink. It's more of a crack than anything. You had the crack here in the Mustang.
Inkling Road on the hill on the left, 47.
Yes.
And Doris and Tommy ambulance lived round the corner. And
Tommy ambulance.
Evelyn and Derek and Jessie and so on. And Christmas time, there'd be a knock on the window, be Derek, come on Cat, come round. And the whole street was in Evelyn and Derek or what they call it, the whole community used to be in one or other houses. And
that's how it was. So we used to go, everybody knew one another,
That's what I was saying, it's such a difference walking up Green Road and Bangor High Street now.
And now they're just more houses, and then everybody just goes out, and you're like, who's that? Because you don't know some people, they're strangers.
I know one of them, but the other one, we think they're students, but I've no clue. But they like to stay up late and drink beer and wine.
Oedden ni'n nabod gymaint yn Hiral. Oedd mond eisiau chi gerdded allan a cerdded i fynd i'r lôn i fynd i dref. Helo Doris. Helo Maggie. Yn y llall rwan, mae'n ei gyd ydyn mynd. Mae pobl ifanc yn pasio chi rwan, mae'n sbio ffordd arall. Da chi ofn sbio ar neb rwan. Mi ddudodd y mab wrtha fi un dwrnod yn y cerdded. Dad, we're going to stop eyeballing. These people are not used to it, you know.
Wedyn adeg hynny, da chi'n dallt, oedd ysgol Hiral yn infants. Byddwch chi eisiau 6, 7, 8. Adag hynny, oeddech chi'n mynd i primary school. Wedyn oedd ysgol Garth o ran fwyaf o pobl hiral yn mynd iddo fo.
On the day that I left, that was the day that the school was closing down. And we got the belts off our back Aberdeens and that and tied ourselves to because we didn't want to go.
I like our school hero because I have so much friends.
Yes, I have tons of friends in our school hero.
Am I your friend? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I'm everybody's friend in this school.
Do you remember the floods coming up?
Yes, my house was flooded.
Was it?
Oh, not with that flood. In my mother's house in our road, you could see, you know, at the time when I was little, you could see it halfway up the wall like that. So that's how much the water was to come in at the time. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
Eglwys Llanfair, mam yn aelod o'r cor yn eglwys. O'n i'n mynd i ysgol Sul, bob Sul, rhaid i chi go. Mam a'ch tad, gyda chi ysgol Sul. Mynd efo mam a'n had ar nos i'r gwasanaeth Gymraeg. Oedd yna ddau gwasanaeth yn bora ag yn nos. A pawb yn is yn yr un set, wrth gwrs lle oedd wedi arfer ar teulu y blina nhw. A wedyn Ifan John Jones oedd y ficar adeg hynny. Total boredom I fi, de.
And I was christened in St Mary's, but they make a big thing about christenings now, and then they have a party afterwards. And my mother would be shaking her head, oh, never did anything like that. It was just on a Monday evening.
Ships ysgol Sul o St Mary's. Ifan Jones oedd yr vicar. A oedd yn gwisgo het fawr a rym felly. Wedyn gath o'i nickname o Wyatt Earp. Wedyn oedd pawb yn galw fo'n Wyatt Earp. A tren o Bangor I Rhyl.
Where the flats are here, there used to be a chapel.
Oh, yeah. Gwynfor from Sailor Road was the organist.
Yes.
It's the same as those old books, you know, with the portraits and the pictures of Hiral. At the time, you didn't realise the value that they have now.
Yeah.
You know, when you look back and you think, you know, it's just ordinary people, but
all of them had made.
They all had a story.
Just by affirming.
Ond na, oedd yn lle diddorol, dwi fyw.
I thought actually, and I still do, it is paradise.
It was a community of its own, wasn't it?
And the people who live here don't never want to leave it, really.
No.